The mansion was too quiet for a home that once held laughter. Every sound echoed: footsteps on marble, the ticking of an antique clock, the distant hiss of rain against tall windows. It was a palace built by brilliance and ambition, but now it felt more like a mausoleum of memories. Ethan Cole, the billionaire everyone called the man who could fix anything, sat at the edge of his children's room, staring at two small wheelchairs side by side. His twins, Lila and Liam, both 7, were staring out the window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. They hadn't walked since the car crash 3 years ago, the same crash that took their mother. Ethan had been in meetings that night chasing another deal, another zero in his empire. He arrived at the hospital too late to say goodbye, and too broken to face what came next. The doctor's words were merciless, clinical: permanent damage to the spinal cord. They may never walk again. You should start accepting it, Mr. Cole. He hadn't accepted it. He couldn't. He brought in specialists from Switzerland, surgeons from Japan, therapists from New York. He spent millions turning their room into a high-tech rehabilitation lab. Yet every effort ended in failure. Every time the doctors left, the silence grew heavier. His children smiled less, spoke less, and the light in their eyes dimmed a little more each day. That morning, Ethan stood by the window when the new nanny arrived. She was late, wearing no uniform, her brown hair tied loosely, her shoes wet from the rain. "Mr. Cole," she said with a quiet confidence that didn't match her simple appearance. "I'm Nora." He gave her one cold glance. "I don't need another caretaker who tells me what can't be done," he said sharply. "I don't tell people what can't be done," she replied softly. "I just help them remember what they still can." Ethan frowned but said nothing. He was too tired to argue, too hollow to hope. He only nodded and left her with the twins, expecting her to fail like everyone else. But Nora didn't start with therapy machines or medical checklists. She opened the curtains, letting sunlight pour in, then opened the window so the sound of the rain and the scent of wet earth could fill the room. "Good morning, Lila. Good morning, Liam," she said, her voice warm, unhurried. "Do you know what this sound is?" "Rain," Liam murmured. "It's the world moving," she said with a smile. "And one day, you'll move with it again." The children didn't respond, just looked at her quietly. But something shifted, something small. They didn't turn away. They didn't close their eyes. For the first time in months, someone had spoken to them like they weren't fragile. Days passed and Nora began breaking every rule the doctors had written. Instead of keeping them in sterile rooms, she took them to the garden. She wheeled their chairs under the old oak tree where the wind played with the leaves like an orchestra. She told stories there, not fairy tales but real ones, of people who had lost everything and still found the strength to rise again. Sometimes she played music and clapped to the rhythm, encouraging them to tap their fingers along. Sometimes she'd sit silently beside them, just listening to the sound of the wind. Slowly, the mansion began to feel less like a hospital and more like a home again. Ethan watched from a distance, confused and skeptical. He couldn't understand what she was doing. No exercises, no machines, no charts, just heart. And yet he noticed changes. Lila started humming again. Liam began asking questions. Their faces carried color that had long faded. One afternoon, Nora leaned close to the twins as the sunlight filtered through the leaves. "Do you know why birds fly?" she asked. Lila tilted her head. "Because they have wings?" Nora smiled. "Because they never believe they can't." That night, Ethan stood at the doorway, watching his children laugh as Nora pretended to chase them in a game of pretend tag. They weren't walking, not yet, but something inside them had started moving again. Hope, once buried under layers of disappointment, flickered back to life. Before leaving the room, Ethan heard Nora kneel beside the twins, her voice barely above a whisper. "When the time comes," she said gently, "remember what I told you." Ethan frowned but didn't ask what she meant. He didn't realize that those quiet words would one day break the curse of stillness and teach his children, and himself, that sometimes the most powerful miracles don't start in the body, but in the heart. The night it happened, the sky was angry. Lightning split the heavens open, and thunder rolled over the vast Cole estate like an ancient beast. Ethan was in his office, staring blankly at a glowing computer screen filled with profit charts and meaningless numbers. He had been pretending to work, but his mind wasn't on business. It was on the sound he thought he heard earlier: laughter. His children's laughter. something he hadn't heard echo through those halls in years. When the next flash of lightning struck, he decided to check on them. As he walked down the long corridor toward the therapy room, the sound of soft music drifted through the air. Not the sterile, mechanical beeps of the medical devices, but something human, a lullaby sung softly, full of belief. He opened the door and froze. Nora was standing behind the twins, her hands gently on their shoulders as they stood between the parallel bars. The room was dimly lit, the stormlight flickering through the tall windows, reflecting in the children's wide eyes. "What are you doing?" Ethan demanded, his voice trembling between fear and fury. "They could get hurt." They can," Nora interrupted calmly. Her tone was firm, unwavering. "You've protected them so much you've forgotten what they're capable of." The twins were shaking. Their small legs trembled like branches in the wind, faces twisted with effort. Ethan felt panic rise in his chest. Every instinct screamed to stop this, to protect them from falling again, from failure, from pain. But before he could move, Nora gave him a single look that said everything. Trust them. And then it happened. Liam's hand slipped. Lila's knees buckled. They fell. The sound of their small bodies hitting the mat ripped through Ethan's heart like a knife. He rushed forward, his voice breaking, but Nora stepped between him and the children. "Don't," she whispered. "Let them decide." He froze, watching his children cry in frustration, their tears mingling with the rain tapping against the glass. But then something miraculous. Liam, the quieter of the two, pushed himself up with trembling arms. He looked at Lila, and through his tears managed a shaky smile. She nodded back. They grabbed the bars again. Ethan's heart was pounding so hard it hurt. His world narrowed to two tiny pairs of legs fighting against gravity. 1 inch, another. They stumbled, gasped, and then one step. It was small, uncertain, but it was real. And then another. Ethan dropped to his knees, tears spilling freely down his face. The billionaire who had everything found himself speechless before the simplest miracle of all, his children walking toward him. When they finally collapsed into his arms, he clutched them as if they were made of gold. His voice was hoarse when he looked at Nora. What did you say to them?" She only smiled faintly, the stormlight glinting in her eyes. "You'll see when it's time." Days turned into weeks, and the miracle spread faster than any news Ethan had ever made in business. The twins who would never walk again were now running through the mansion halls, their laughter echoing like sunlight reborn. Journalists begged for interviews, doctors called it unexplainable, and investors wanted to fund Nora's method. But she refused all of it. Ethan watched from the terrace one golden morning as the twins played tag in the same garden that had once been a place of silence. Nora stood quietly by the old oak tree, her hands folded, her smile distant but content. When the reporters finally left, Ethan walked toward her. "I've asked 100 times," he said softly, "but I need to know now. What were those words you whispered that night?" She looked at him, eyes calm and kind. The wind brushed against her hair as she replied, "I told them you already can." Ethan felt something deep inside him shift. 3 simple words, words so small yet so powerful they shattered the chains of doubt, fear, and hopelessness that had bound his family for years. It wasn't medicine or money that healed his children. It was belief. The kind of belief that starts in the soul before it reaches the body. As the twins ran toward them, their laughter filling the air, Ethan turned to Nora once more. "You've given me back more than I ever deserved," he said quietly. She shook her head. "I didn't give them anything. I only reminded them of what was already theirs." And as the sun broke through the clouds, Ethan realized that those 3 words weren't just for his children. They were for him too. You already can. The mansion, once silent and heavy with sorrow, finally felt alive again. Not because of miracles, but because of faith reborn in the hearts of those who had forgotten it.